Symposium in commemoration of the 15th anniversary of Stichting Rancho. Before I give some background and some logistics, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the Prime Minister of Aruba, Mr. Mike Eman, and his distinguished wife. Some background of how we got here today. Some years ago, I was lucky enough to be approached by management of the Archaeological Museum, who was then to move from this building to a new building, as we all know, in the Havenstraat. And I was approached to work on a research to get some narratives for a temporary exposition on the neighborhood of Rancho. What an honor. Their goal were then to highlight not only the problems of the neighborhood, but particularly to highlight those who excelled in the community, those who contributed in the community, the cultural heritage in the community, but it was also to build a sustainable community. After that, in 2020, as today is, after that in 2020, I believe, then the Stichting Ranchos initiated, I believe, Clifford? 2010, in 2010. So it was 2009 we had the exposition. Thank you. Thank you for that correction. Then in 2010, community members, and I would say that that marked actually the culmination of the objectives of the exposition. Community members came together and they organized what we know today as Stichting Rancho. They were inspired, and these professionals and citizens who all hailed from the neighborhood started the foundation. Today we are here to look back briefly at the accomplishments of the foundation and to prepare for, I have here the next decade, but maybe I could put to prepare for forever. Before we go into the reflections and the presentations that they have prepared today, I would like to give you some logistics and what they call huishoudelijke mededelingen for today. Today we are going to swap in languages, and therefore I would like to ask your permission to say something in Papiamento. Bom dia, turhende. Danke pa te, è importante para nós reconhecer nosso próprio idioma também. Nós também temos lunch. We're going to have a lunch at around, I'm looking for the time, a coffee break and also a lunch. And we are making that an experience for you. So we hope you will like that. In the back, we have a support by Elvira. And as they come along, según Nambini, Lumi anuncianan pa. Without any further ado, mita sigue de imediato with speech the Prime Minister de Aruba, Minister Presidente de Aruba, Senor Mike Eman.
Good morning. Bom dia, buenos dias. University of Aruba, Stichting Rancho. Thank you very much for this invitation. I believe it comes at a very crucial moment also in the history of Aruba, a very important moment for reflection in our society. Today, I would like to share with you part of a manuscript that I'm writing as a reflection on Aruba, the soul of Aruba, which actually started at a very challenging moment in our history. It was, and also a challenging moment for myself and my wife, Doina, present here today. In 2020, in January, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and we needed to start a chemotherapy. And in the same week that we started with chemotherapy, we had the very anxious news of COVID entering also our islands. When you are receiving chemotherapy, your resistance and immunity is very, very low. And if at that same time you have a virus out there that makes it very challenging also for our life and also for being outside. So the lockdown in the household of family Iman was double, for I needed to protect my wife. And at that same moment, Aruba was passing through a very rough time because our tourism and our airport was closed, and we were in negotiation with the Netherlands to see how the Netherlands would support Aruba. During those negotiations, I felt concern. I felt that Aruba was being cornered, and I felt also that the typical fighting spirit of our island was not present. And that created for me a deep moment of reflection and thinking about the history of Aruba, thinking about the great moments of strife and struggle of our island. I felt the need to reflect on what is the strength of Aruba and where did Aruba over years, centuries, get this very special strength that we could overcome difficult moments and stood our ground so often in history. And I started writing and researching, and what I will be sharing with you today is part of a chapter of the unfinished book, and it's now going to be even more difficult to finish this book. But in my book, I have a chapter that is inspired by Rancho, and bear with me, this is a kind of a almost literary translation from Dutch to English of a part of the book, but I believe that it would definitely make the point that all of us want to make today, is how can we find in our heritage, in our history, the characteristics to give us strength to form and design and construct a new vision for the future of our island. And it's that reflection that I'm also going to share with you specifically in the history and the culture, or the part of the culture of Rancho. I will start with a poem which is very appropriate for this chapter, because it's talking about a person, a family Orman, and a fisherman, Bus Orman, who is on the big seas of Aruba and at some point is a little bit lost. And what are the values and what are the characteristics that bring him home is part of what we also need to find today, those guiding stars when we don't see a light tower, the guiding stars that need to guide us safely home. I will start with a poem that says, if you are lost and can no longer find the way back, if after endless searching through many twists and turns, you arrive at something you never imagined, then you are stronger than expected. The chapter, this part, is called The Hidden Forces. It is early in the morning on Friday, May 15, 1903, along the coast of Parlembai. A young girl, Myra, is sitting on a rock watching the waves roll in rhythmically on the shore. Her father stands half submerged in the water, performing maintenance on his boat. These are the final preparations before going out to fish. Myra watches fascinated by the tides, the seas at the shore and around her father. At one moment, the water reaches his hips, and a moment later, it's nearly up to his chest. The forces of nature ebb and flow. The tides are so visibly present along the coast. Myra sees this too, right there on the beach. Sometimes the sea reaches the rocky natural steps where she often sits to daydream, and at other times it stays far away. It is the calm and the restless of the deep ocean that can be felt all the way to the shore. It is a blend of fantasy and reality, of history and myth, of metaphor that can be derived from it. Myra's father is no scientist, but a simple fisherman, though well known across the island. His name is Boes Orman. He knows everything about the mysterious movement of the sea. Each day, he looks for the signs to analyze the hidden forces of the sea, the wind, and the waves, and to predict his chances of a good catch. Others ask him for advice. Boes always knows exactly where he is at sea, and he can always find his way back home by using what we call in Papiamento the marcas, visible landmarks on land. Hills and mountains and lighthouses also in Aruba, Venezuela, or Colombia provides him with orientation. Far from shore, Boes navigates by the sun, moon, stars, and horizon, guided by deep knowledge of the seasons and sharp intuition. A pressure in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, signals of when to go or not to go. Today, he sets out early to return before strong afternoon currents, but the sea is never predictable. Reading its signs to predict these mystical forces is always challenging. Routine can dull the senses, so Boes must always be alert, relying on keen observation and insight to make the right call. As a boy, Boes learned from his late father and older brother Juan, who also sails today. In his community, listening to elders is vital, sometimes a matter of survival. Though the sea on the west coast of Aruba is sheltered between the island and the mainland of Venezuela and Colombia, the sea can still turn rough and unpredictable. Many fishermen have vanished without a trace. Boes understands the risk and has gained essential knowledge: bait, hooks, fishing lines, and timing. But just as vital is the fisherman's code: cooperation, hierarchy, mutual care, and fair sharing of the catch, all rooted in gratitude to the Lord for safety and provision. Gratitude that also expresses itself in the warm and natural way in which the catch is shared with others beyond just family. The good is a gift from heaven that calls for mercy. His fellow island agricultural people, horticulture family, and livestock farming are also part of this sharing. When the catch harvest or yield is not solely consumed for self-sufficiently or fairly distributed, it becomes part of a friendly barter system. Gratitude and friendship are part of this life of sharing. It's called Romana, brotherhood. This they all learned from oral tradition or their faith. The source of these norms and values is no longer easily traceable, but the custom is deeply rooted like a duty of care in their conscience. Great virtues for life's fundamental questions when hand in, hand out to useful instructions of everyone needing a guidance. What they have seen and experienced on their journey to life, the elders pass on to the next generations. Eleuterio, Boes' father, left him not only such a deeply rooted worldview, but also a physical embodiment of the family's tradition, a solid, self-built fishing boat named Consuelo. Not just any boat, but a true masterpiece that now provides for the next generation. Without fail, in the annual Año de la Reina sailing competition, the ship upholds the family's reputation as skilled boat builders, a legacy with a history and a mission that must be continued. to provide for lives of family and friends. Learning from the past for safe sailing into the future. Sharing what the sea, Mama Naturaleza, has shared with them. Unlike the other natural challenges that our arid, dry landscape brings, the sea offers relief. The harvest is less erratic, and the reward for the effort is always sufficient. The sea is a blessing. Its waters are rich with fish and full of life. As the far back of the indigenous times, seafood sources were always abundant. It's especially along the west coast of our island that indigenous fishing settlement arose. Traditions, customs, norms, and values of Booth's family in 1900 go back several centuries to the island's original inhabitants. The fishing was concentrated mainly in the sea area between Aruba and the mainland. From South America, the land slopes gently into the sea, making it relatively shallow and an ideal environment for various fishing species. This continental shelf is known as the Bajo, meaning shallow, and is only about 200 meters deep. That is where Booth, his brother Wang, and the local fishing fleet often sailed to fish. Booth and his fellow deep-sea fishermen prefer line fishing, while trap and net fishing is more common and successful along Aruba's northern coast. The only nets Booth and his crew use are the taray, small casting nets with fine mesh used to catch bait fish. Booth's brother Wang is currently near the coast, standing in the shallow waters, skillfully casting his taray. He usually catches small sardines, which they typically use as bait for the fishing expedition, just like today. It is these moments that bring back history and bring back the tradition in all our families. Booth and Wang Orman have finished their preparation and are now wading back to the beach where this early May morning more fishermen and their families have gathered. Young and old are involved in getting ready for the day's fishing. Most of them live right here along the coast. Their homes are located on the northwest side of Oranjestad, on a plateau about a meter and a half above the sea level. Scattered across this plateau are humble houses and huts. It's a tight-knit community with its own typical customs, values, and a modest yet warm and simple way of life. Today is busier than usual. Booth and one sister, Emilia, has gathered the fishing village together. They are expecting guests. Rancho has come together for an important visit from the motherland. A visit from the motherland. Too brief for depth. This is quote unquote. Many came to listen to our conversations, especially women with long dresses and the finely featured Indian type. Yet no one complained. One had to ask them about their grievances. They accepted their hard fate, for the idea that there were people in faraway countries, both able and willing to help them in their needs, was beyond their understanding. They wanted to bear their hard fate without even daring to hope for improvement. In Dutch, velen kwamen luisteren naar onze gesprekken. Niet het minst vrouwen met lange haartressen en fijn besneden Indiaanse type. Toch werd er niet geklaagd. Men moest hun naar hun grieven vragen. Zij berusten in hun harde lot. Want dat er in vele verre landen mensen woonden in staat en bereid hun hulp te verlenen in hun noden, ging hun begrip te boven. Zij wilden het hardste lot dragen zonder zelf op verbetering te durven hopen. The passage is from a 1903 travel account by a Dutch member of parliament who visited Aruba, the island he called the Islands of the Indians, where everyone and everything, as he wrote, languages from a lack of water. The member of parliament, spokesman for colonial affairs, Henry Hubert van Kol, describes in this part of his report how early morning he walked to the fishing hamlet of Rancho, located near Oranjestad, the home of Booth. He continued, a good people lived in impoverished huts next to the rough salt-producing pans. They had nothing to live on but fishing, and that too under difficult circumstances. Currents and lacked proper resources. There were no proper nets, and both large and small fishes had to be overpowered with hooks. In this account, Van Col expressed astonishment that during his conversations with the people of Rancho, no one complained. You had to ask them about their grievances. Despite the visible poverty, no one voiced despair. He found it sorrowful that these Arubans accepted their harsh fate, while in faraway countries there lived people who were able and willing to help them in their needs. But this was beyond their comprehensiveness. He remained troubled by their view of life. They wanted to bear their hard fate without even daring to hope for improvement. The Member of Parliament Col, who was member of the co-founder and together with Tulstra of the Social Democratic Party, SDAP of the Netherlands, went on a mission in 1903 to the islands of the Dutch Antilles. Van Col, a vocal advocate for colonies in the Dutch states, has brought these sentiments forward in the parliament. He didn't understand. Do we, from a humanitarian view, truly have the right to keep a colony if we can't stop its decline and growing poverty? He asked his co-members in parliament. During his brief visit to Aruba, like the other islands, he toured Rancho, fishing communities, schools, mines, and aloe fields and farms. He was struck by the persistent poverty and moved by the hardworking Arubans striving to provide for their families. Their low expectations for outside help both intrigued and saddened him. Isn't it time, he asked, to challenge this distrust? At the cradle of a longing, in the heart of a movement. Member of Parliament Van Col recognized the external vulnerability of the Arubans in 1903, but he did not see that they could and would find their strength precisely there where the courses were scarce. He saw hunger, he saw poverty, but he was too short in Aruba to see the strength of the community that surpassed these limitations. The people ethos that sprung from adversity and challenge, hardworking people with immense willpower, resilience, and compassion and solidarity. This led to a profession of a meaningful life, the soul of the Aruban. A life that need not always to be joyful. Life could be harsh and difficult, especially in an Aruba of that time, exposed to heat and drought of its natural environment. But it was precisely this inner conviction and strength that became the fertile ground for a shared longing and the collective pursuit of the common good, of self-determination and sovereignty in one's own sphere. Unaware of himself, Van Col stood at that time in that place in Rancho at the beginning of the 20th century at the cradle of the birth of an ideal, in the very heart of a historical people's movement, precisely because of the poverty and difficult living conditions. Arubans were yearning for greater self-governance, gained an immense force. For simple matters, such as coolers to store the catch of Rancho's fishermen, or adequate piers to dock their fishing boats safely and to build more canoes, Aruba did not even have the authority to make such decisions. Years of waiting and pleading were necessary before the Colonial Council would grant requests like this. There were many such initiatives and wishes in Aruba, from dredging Pardabay to countless others in every area that concerned the quality of life of its people, all of which ran up against the wall of centralized authority. And it was out of this drive to pursue the common good, and that longing arose to be master in our own house, in our own home, sovereign in our own sphere. Out of immersed dedication, forged in a difficult circumstances, there is an emerged sense of vision and determination that became part of the Aruban soul. A community where people cherish freedom to develop through their own efforts and in cooperation with others, virtues and well-being for all, fulfilling their innate purpose. I just read part of the chapter. The red line in the story is that as Bus and his brother Cirilio are on sea, and that evening darkens very fast, the catch was good, but when they decide to go back home, they don't see the lights of the coast, and they don't see the light of the Willem III Toren, which always guided them back home. And it's at that moment that Boes could rely on what he was learned by his father, by the tradition and the knowledge that was passed from one generation to the other. He looked at the stars, he looked at the moon and found his position, and he raised his sails, and together with his brother, they made it back home safely with the catch of the day that they could share with families awaiting them. It was at that difficult moment that he also said the prayer of the sailor, asking God for guidance and asking God to bring him safely because his family and a community was waiting. It is these values and it are these moments of challenges that created a country with strength and conviction to surpass limitations. Rancho is a beautiful, beautiful example of this. This picture I brought here today is the panorama, what you could see back in 1903 when Mr. Van Col visited Aruba. And this is the picture that tells the story of the fishermen, the small sailboats that brought life to people waiting in need on this coast of Aruba. It is an important lesson that we learn from this history of Rancho. My late grandfather said that the hand of the Providence gave Aruba at some point in 1920s when the refinery came wealth and growth and economic possibilities. But he was concerned that we would not able to share that. And he made the point that if the hand of the Providence brings wealth, we have a responsibility to share it. There was a connection made between the strife and the struggle for sovereignty and the aspirations for the common good. In these times, Aruba developed very fast. We saw that based on this coming together of our community, people were able to build schools, to build churches, to build roads, to build new possibilities for our island between the period that we received our autonomy and the period that we entered the modern epocha of Aruba. I'm standing here with a lot of sense of conviction also that this reflection is important because I believe that we lost this connection. We lost this connection between creating economic wealth and sharing this with our community. That connection was so essential in the period that Aruba was striving for autonomy and in the first decades of its autonomy. You could have seen the connection between self-government and new schools, new neighborhoods, new roads, new hospitals. We have lost that connection. Speak to the people in Aruba, and they say, we have 5-star hotels, but we don't have a 5-star quality of life on our island. If we want to find the way back, we have to look at Boes and we have to look at Rancho to find the way how we can connect back our essential senses of commitment to one another, our belief in God, faith, and hope in order to have a guiding star. It is not the numbers, the materialistic accounting of how much GDP we have, but what quality of life our citizens have. That connection has been lost, and I believe that this reflection today could give us the fundamentals to find a new way to the future, which gets its inspiration from these very important factors, these very important characteristics of our society when we live together, when we didn't live for me, but we lived for we. And it's that type of community that has made Aruba strong and should make Aruba strong again for the future. Hopi éxito o e momento de reflexão importante aqui. Felicitação na Fundação Rancho. Hopi ayamas de existência. Nos lotei para sostener vosso. Muchas gracias para su presencia. De Guajira, Rio Hacha, Islam, país cerca de nós, nos indianan a Cruz Alamá Nós a conhecer a cerimônia ng momento na bonita, ora que nós estamos da também para conhecer tudo o qual há se nós sociedade e sociedade com hopi força. At the end, I would like to share with you that the story of Rancho is one part of where we can find the characteristics, the values that we need to discover how we were strong in the past and where we can find again the ingredients to be strong for the future. Go to the Museo Arqueológico. Look at the studies that were made of the burial sites of our indigenous people in Malmok. And what you will find is respect for people. The way our people were buried back then shows how dignified people felt for their ancestors, how respectful they were for their ancestors and for people. Look at the study of Tanki Flip, and you will see how communities work together, how a town was formed, how an infrastructure of Roy with channels were connected by very ingenious forms of infrastructure to create a better quality of life for a small town community of our Indians. Look at the studies of the drawings of our Indians all over Aruba, and you will find a pure reflection of a society that looked at the sky, looked at the stars, looked at the moon, looked at the natural environment, and showed respect for everything that was giving life. So there's so much in our soils, so much in our tradition that we can hold on to create a better future for our island. Masadanki y hopi éxito.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for the excerpt and analogy of how we can use our values, norms, our genuine knowledge, intuitive knowledge to focus on our future and also use that for sustainability and connection. We have a intermezzo, I was asked now,